The Greyhound bus pulled into Willow Creek, Montana at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon. The late September sun hung low over the mountains, casting long golden shadows across Main Street. Inside the bus, Elena Vasquez pressed her forehead against the cool glass window and watched her hometown come into view for the first time in 7 years. She had left Willow Creek with nothing but a backpack and $300 in crumpled bills. Now she was returning with even less. Her savings had been drained by the bus ticket, and the only clothes she owned fit into a single duffel bag that rested on the empty seat beside her. The bus hissed to a stop in front of Miller's General Store, the same store where she had worked summers during high school, stocking shelves and dreaming of a life beyond these mountains. Elena gathered her belongings and stepped off the bus, her worn sneakers meeting the familiar cracked sidewalk. Willow Creek had not changed much. The same red brick buildings lined Main Street. The same American flags hung from lampposts. The same pickup trucks were parked in diagonal rows outside the diner. But Elena had changed. 7 years in the city had hardened her in ways she was still discovering. She walked toward the only place she knew she could go. Her grandmother's house sat 3 blocks from Main Street, a small white cottage with blue shutters and a garden that had once been the pride of the neighborhood. Elena did not know if her grandmother would welcome her. They had not spoken in 4 years, not since Elena had stopped returning calls, too ashamed of the life she was living to face anyone from her past. The garden was overgrown now. Weeds pushed through the flower beds, and the paint on the shutters was peeling. Elena's heart sank. She had expected to find her grandmother unchanged, frozen in time like everything else in this town. But time had moved forward here too. She knocked on the front door. The sound echoed through the quiet afternoon. Footsteps shuffled inside, slow and uncertain. The door opened a crack, and Elena saw her grandmother's face for the first time in years. Rosa Vasquez was 82 years old now, her hair completely white, her brown skin marked with deep wrinkles that had not been there before. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, knowing, full of a warmth that Elena did not deserve. "Abuela," Elena said. Rosa stared at her granddaughter for a long moment. Then she opened the door wider and stepped aside. "You look hungry," Rosa said. "Come eat." Elena stepped into the house and felt the weight of her failures settle onto her shoulders. The house smelled like cinnamon and old books, exactly as she remembered. Photographs lined the walls, images of a family that had once been whole. Elena saw pictures of her mother, who had died when Elena was 12. Her father, who had left 2 years later and never returned. Her own childhood face stared back at her from a dozen frames, a girl who had no idea what was coming. Rosa led her to the kitchen and gestured toward the small wooden table. Elena sat down while her grandmother moved slowly around the kitchen, heating soup on the stove and slicing bread with hands that trembled slightly. "I saw the announcement in the paper," Rosa said without turning around. "Marcus Whitmore is getting married tomorrow." Elena's stomach tightened. She had known this, of course. It was the reason she had returned. Not to stop the wedding. Not to win Marcus back. Those fantasies had died long ago. She had returned because she needed to see it happen. She needed to close the door on that chapter of her life so she could finally move forward. "I know," Elena said quietly. Rosa brought the soup to the table and sat down across from her granddaughter. "The wedding is at the Whitmore estate. The whole town is invited. I received my invitation 3 months ago." Elena nodded. The Whitmores owned half of Willow Creek. Marcus's father had built his fortune in real estate, buying up land throughout the valley and developing it into luxury properties that attracted wealthy visitors from the cities. The Whitmore estate was the crown jewel, a sprawling mansion on 300 acres with views of the mountains that took your breath away. Elena had spent countless hours at that estate during the 2 years she had dated Marcus. She had walked those gardens, eaten at that dining room table, dreamed of one day calling that place home. But those dreams had crumbled when Marcus had ended their relationship without warning, telling her that she was not the right fit for the family's future. She had been 22 years old, young enough to believe that her heart would heal quickly. But some wounds went deeper than others. "Are you going to the wedding?" Rosa asked. Elena looked down at her soup. I do not have an invitation. Rosa reached across the table and covered Elena's hand with her own. You do not need an invitation to know your own worth, mija. They ate in silence after that. Outside, the sun continued its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Elena watched the light change through the kitchen window and felt something shift inside her. She had spent 7 years running from this place, running from the memory of rejection and humiliation. But running had not healed her. It had only postponed the reckoning. After dinner, Rosa showed Elena to her old bedroom. The room had not changed. The same quilt covered the bed. The same posters hung on the walls. Elena set her duffel bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the mattress, feeling like a ghost visiting her own past. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. There was nothing new. No one from her city life was wondering where she had gone. She had slipped away without anyone noticing, like a stone sinking into still water. Elena lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Marcus Whitmore would marry Sophia Reynolds, the daughter of a senator and the perfect match for a family with political ambitions. The wedding would be covered by regional newspapers. The guest list included mayors, business leaders, and minor celebrities. It would be the social event of the year in Willow Creek. And Elena would be watching from the outside, just as she always had. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her into sleep. The next morning arrived with birdsong and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. Elena showered and dressed in the nicest clothes she owned, a simple black dress that she had bought at a thrift store 2 years ago. It was not appropriate for a wedding, but it was all she had. Rosa was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a knowing expression. You are going, Rosa said. It was not a question. Elena nodded. I need to. Rosa studied her granddaughter for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. She placed it in Elena's palm. Elena looked down. It was a silver medallion on a thin chain, engraved with a simple image of a sun rising over mountains. This belonged to your mother, Rosa said. She wore it on the day she married your father. She would want you to have it. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Abuela, I cannot accept this. You can, Rosa said firmly. And you will. You are stronger than you know, mija. Today is not about Marcus Whitmore. Today is about you remembering who you are. Elena fastened the medallion around her neck. The weight of it felt like an anchor, connecting her to something solid and true. She hugged her grandmother and walked out the front door. The Whitmore estate was 5 miles outside of town, too far to walk in her thin-soled shoes. Elena made her way to the bus stop on Main Street and waited. A small shuttle service ran between the town and the estate during special events, and she was hoping to catch a ride. The shuttle arrived 20 minutes later. Elena climbed aboard and found a seat near the back. The other passengers were dressed in their finest attire, suits and dresses that probably cost more than everything Elena owned combined. She felt their eyes on her, measuring her worth and finding her lacking. The shuttle wound through the valley, past fields of golden grass and groves of aspen trees that had begun to turn yellow. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow. Elena had forgotten how beautiful this place was. She had tried to forget everything about Willow Creek, but the land itself was impossible to erase from her memory. The estate came into view around a bend in the road. Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. The mansion looked even grander than she remembered, its white columns gleaming in the morning sun. A massive white tent had been erected on the lawn, visible from the road. Luxury cars lined the long driveway, and guests in elegant clothing milled about the grounds. The shuttle stopped at the main gate, where security guards in dark suits checked invitations. Elena watched the other passengers file off the bus and present their invitations. One by one, they were admitted through the gate and welcomed onto the property. Elena remained in her seat. The shuttle driver turned around. "Last stop, ma'am." Elena stood up and walked to the front of the bus. She thanked the driver and stepped onto the gravel drive. The security guards eyed her as she approached. "Invitation, please," one of them said. Elena straightened her spine. "I do not have one." The guard's expression hardened. "Then I am afraid you cannot enter. This is a private event." Elena stood her ground. "I understand. I am just here to watch." The guard shook his head. "Ma'am, I am going to have to ask you to leave." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Well, well, well, look who decided to show her face." Elena turned. A group of women in pastel dresses were standing near the gate, champagne flutes in hand. At the center of the group was Meredith Callahan, who had been Elena's closest friend in high school before choosing to side with Marcus after the breakup. Meredith approached with a smile that held no warmth. "Elena Vasquez, I almost did not recognize you. What happened? Did you run out of money in the city?" The other women laughed. Elena felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her voice steady. "Hello, Meredith, you look well." Meredith circled Elena like a predator examining prey. "I cannot believe you actually came. Do you have any idea how pathetic this looks? Showing up to your ex-boyfriend's wedding in a dress that belongs in a donation bin?" More laughter. Elena felt the eyes of the security guards on her, watching to see how she would react. "I came to say goodbye," Elena said quietly. "Not to Marcus, to the girl I used to be when I was with him. She was lost for a long time, but I am finding her again." Meredith snorted. "That is the saddest thing I have ever heard." "Guard, can you please escort this woman off the property? She is making everyone uncomfortable." The security guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." Elena nodded. She had expected this. She had known she would not be allowed to stay. But she had needed to try. She had needed to stand at the gates of her past and face it without running. She turned to leave, and that was when she heard the sound. It started as a low rumble in the distance, like thunder rolling across the valley. But the sky was clear, and there was no storm on the horizon. The rumble grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the ground itself. Elena turned back toward the road. Motorcycles. Not one or two, but dozens of them. They appeared around the bend in the road like a wave of chrome and leather, their engines roaring in unison. The sun glinted off their handlebars and mirrors, creating a dazzling display of light and sound. The guests near the gate froze. The security guards reached for their radios. Meredith's champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the gravel. The motorcycles pulled up to the gate and stopped, their engines idling in a deep, powerful chorus. Elena counted them instinctively. 50. There were 50 motorcycles, each one carrying a rider in a leather vest with patches that she did not recognize from this distance. The lead rider killed his engine and removed his helmet. He was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and a face weathered by decades of sun and wind. His eyes were sharp and clear, taking in the scene before him with calm assessment. He dismounted and walked toward Elena. The security guards moved to intercept him, but the man raised a hand. "Easy, brother," he said. "We are not here to cause trouble. We are here for her." He pointed directly at Elena. Elena stared at him in confusion. "I do not know you." The man smiled. "No, you do not. But your grandmother does. My name is Cole Reyes. I am the president of the Iron Ravens, and Rosa Vasquez is the woman who saved my mother's life 40 years ago." Elena's mind raced. She had never heard her grandmother mention the Iron Ravens. She had never heard this man's name. Cole continued. "Rosa called me this morning. She told me her granddaughter was coming to face her past alone. She asked if we could make sure she did not have to." He turned and gestured toward the rows of motorcycles. Behind him, the other riders had dismounted. They stood in a long line, men and women of all ages, their leather vests marked with patches that bore the Iron Raven's insignia, a black bird with wings spread wide, rising from flames. "We take care of our own," Cole said, "and any family of Rosa Vasquez is family to us." Elena felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked back at the gate, where Meredith and the other guests were watching in stunned silence. The security guards had stepped back, clearly uncertain how to handle this situation. Cole offered Elena his arm. "Shall we?" Elena took a deep breath. She wiped her tears and took his arm. Together, they walked toward the gate. The security guard who had tried to turn Elena away stepped forward, but Cole raised an eyebrow. "I believe the lady would like to see the wedding," Cole said calmly. "And I believe you would like us to leave peacefully once it is over. I suggest we find a compromise." The guard hesitated. Behind him, another guard was speaking urgently into his radio. A moment later, a new figure appeared at the gate. Elena recognized him instantly. Richard Whitmore, Marcus's father. He was older now, his hair completely silver, but he still carried himself with the arrogance that she remembered. Richard surveyed the scene with barely concealed fury. "What is the meaning of this?" Cole stepped forward. "Mr. Whitmore, my name is Cole Reyes. I believe you know who we are." Richard's jaw tightened. "I know exactly who you are. And you are not welcome on my property." Cole nodded slowly. "I understand. But here's the situation. This young woman has every right to watch a public ceremony. She is standing on a public road, and we are standing with her. Now, we can do this the hard way, and you can try to have us removed, which will create a scene that I am sure you do not want at your son's wedding. Or we can do this the easy way. You let Elena watch the ceremony from a respectful distance, and we leave quietly when it is over. No drama, no headlines, no problems." Richard stared at Cole for a long moment. Then he turned his gaze to Elena. "You," he said. "I told my son you would cause trouble. I told him you were not the kind of woman who knows how to let go." Elena met his eyes without flinching. "I am not here to cause trouble, Mr. Whitmore. I am here to say goodbye. To your son, to this town, to the girl I was when I believed I was not good enough. That girl is gone now. I am just here to bury her properly." Richard blinked. For a moment, something flickered across his face. It might have been respect. It might have been recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask he always wore. "Fine," he said. "You can watch from the hill beyond the tent. But if you or your friends cause any disturbance, I will have you all arrested." Cole nodded. "Fair enough. Thank you for your hospitality." Richard turned and walked back toward the estate without another word. Cole looked at Elena. "Are you ready?" Elena nodded. "I am." The Iron Ravens escorted Elena around the perimeter of the property to a small hill that overlooked the wedding tent. From there she could see the rows of white chairs, the flower-covered arch, the string quartet that was playing soft music as guests took their seats. The bikers spread out around her, forming a protective semicircle. Some of them sat on the grass. Others leaned against their motorcycles. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes brought Elena a bottle of water and a sandwich wrapped in foil. "You need to eat something," the woman said. "Whatever happens down there, you need your strength." Elena accepted the food gratefully. She had not eaten since last night. The wedding ceremony began at noon. Elena watched as Marcus took his place at the altar. He was handsome in his tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating confidence. He was everything she had once wanted, everything she had once believed she needed. Sophia appeared in a cascade of white silk and lace, escorted by her father down the aisle. She was beautiful, of course, perfect in every way that Elena was not. The right family, the right education, the right connections. Elena waited for the jealousy to come. She waited for the bitterness and regret that had haunted her for 7 years. But they did not come. Instead, she felt something she had not expected. Peace. She watched as Marcus and Sophia exchanged vows. She watched as they kissed and the crowd applauded. She watched as rose petals were thrown and the string quartet played a triumphant melody. And she felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude that she had not become Mrs. Marcus Whitmore. Gratitude that she had been forced to find her own path, even when that path had led through darkness and pain. Gratitude that she was standing on this hill, surrounded by strangers who had become protectors, watching her past fade into history. Cole appeared at her side. "How are you doing?" Elena turned to him with a smile. "I am doing better than I have in years." Cole nodded. "Good. Because the reception is about to start, and I have a feeling that things are about to get interesting. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Because stories like this one, stories about courage and redemption and the unexpected kindness of strangers, deserve to be told. And if you are subscribed, you will never miss a single one." Chapter 2. The reception was held inside the grand tent, but the sounds of celebration carried easily up the hill. Music and laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses drifted through the warm afternoon air, painting a picture of joy and abundance. Elena remained on the hill as the sun moved across the sky. Some of the Iron Ravens had departed, their responsibilities calling them elsewhere. But Cole and about 20 others stayed, keeping her company as the hours passed. Cole told her stories about her grandmother, about how Rosa had worked as a nurse in the county hospital 40 years ago, and how she had stayed by Cole's mother's bedside for 3 days straight when the woman was fighting a dangerous infection. The doctors had given up. The family had been told to prepare for the worst, but Rosa had refused to stop fighting. She had researched alternative treatments, advocated for additional medications, and simply refused to leave. Cole's mother had survived. She had lived another 30 years, long enough to see her grandson become a man. "I made a promise to your grandmother," Cole said. "I told her that if she ever needed anything, she only had to ask. She never asked. Not once in 40 years. Until this morning." Elena felt fresh tears on her cheeks. She did not know about any of this. Cole shrugged. "Rosa is not the kind of woman who tells stories about her own heroism. But everyone in this valley knows what she has done. Everyone who matters, anyway." The afternoon faded into evening. The reception continued below, the music shifting from classical arrangements to a lively band that played country songs and rock covers. Through the open sides of the tent, Elena could see couples dancing, children running between tables, and caterers moving efficiently with trays of food and drink. She was about to suggest that they leave when she noticed a commotion near the edge of the tent. A woman in a blue dress was arguing with one of the security guards. Her voice was raised, her gestures sharp and emphatic. Elena squinted, trying to make out who it was. Cole noticed her attention. "What is happening?" "I am not sure," Elena said, "but something is wrong." The argument ended abruptly when the security guard grabbed the woman's arm. She pulled away, stumbling, and nearly fell. Another guest intervened, pushing the guard back, and suddenly there were raised voices and pointing fingers, and the music stuttered to a stop. Elena stood up. "That woman needs help." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You want to go down there?" Elena hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay where she was. She had no business interfering in the affairs of the Whitmore family. She had already accomplished what she came to do. She had faced her past and found peace. But the woman in the blue dress was crying now, surrounded by security guards who were clearly preparing to remove her by force, and no one else was moving to help her. "Yes," Elena said. "I need to go down there." Cole studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Then we go together." They descended the hill with a dozen Iron Ravens following behind. The wedding guests parted before them like water before a ship, whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Elena recognized some of the faces. Former classmates, teachers from her high school, business owners from Main Street. They all stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to grudging curiosity. She ignored them all. The woman in the blue dress was named Margaret Chen. Elena did not know her personally, but she recognized the name. Margaret was a local school teacher who had been involved in a long-running dispute with the Whitmore family over a piece of land that bordered the school property. When Elena reached the edge of the confrontation, she heard Margaret's voice clearly for the first time. "You cannot do this," Margaret was saying. "That land belongs to the community. You have no right to develop it." Richard Whitmore stood opposite her, flanked by his security team. His face was a mask of controlled anger. "This is neither the time nor the place for this discussion," Richard said coldly. "You are disrupting my son's wedding. Remove her." The security guards moved forward. "Wait," Elena said. Everyone turned to look at her. Richard's eyes narrowed. "You again. I thought I made myself clear. You were to observe from a distance." "I was," Elena said, "but I could not observe a woman being mistreated and do nothing." Richard's lip curled. "This does not concern you. Margaret Chen is a troublemaker who has been harassing my family for months. She crashed my son's wedding to make a scene. She is getting exactly what she deserves." Elena looked at Margaret, whose face was streaked with tears and mascara. "What land is he talking about?" Margaret took a shaky breath. "There is a parcel of land next to the elementary school. It has been used as a community garden and playground for 20 years. Last month, Richard Whitmore bought it from the county and announced plans to build luxury condominiums. The children will lose their only outdoor space." "That land was legally purchased," Richard snapped. "I followed every regulation. There is nothing illegal about my plans." "Legal is not the same as right," Elena said quietly. The words hung in the air. Richard stared at her with undisguised contempt. "And who are you to lecture me about right and wrong?" he asked. "The girl who showed up uninvited to her ex-boyfriend's wedding? The girl who could not accept that she was not good enough for my family?" Elena felt the sting of his words, but she did not flinch. "You are right, Mr. Whitmore. I was not good enough for your family, and I spent 7 years believing that meant I was not good enough for anything. But I was wrong. Being rejected by you was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to find my own worth instead of borrowing it from your name." Richard's face reddened. "Get out, all of you, before I have you arrested." Cole stepped forward. "We will leave when the lady is ready to leave, and not a moment before." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Elena could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her, waiting to see what would happen next. Then a new voice cut through the silence. "Father, that is enough." Marcus Whitmore walked through the crowd, his bride on his arm. He looked at Elena with an expression she could not quite read. It was not anger. It was not contempt. It was something closer to resignation. "Elena," Marcus said, "I did not expect to see you here." Elena met his eyes. "I did not expect to come, but I needed to." Marcus nodded slowly. He turned to his father. "Let them go. This is my wedding day. I will not have it remembered for a confrontation with bikers and old girlfriends." Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Marcus looked at Margaret Chen. "Mrs. Chen, I apologize for how you have been treated. This is not the appropriate venue for discussing business matters, but I give you my word that I will look into the situation with the school property. If there is a way to reach a compromise, I will find it." Margaret stared at him in disbelief. "You would do that?" Marcus glanced at Elena, then back at Margaret. "I have recently been reminded that legacy is not built on wealth alone. It is built on the lives we touch and the communities we serve. I cannot promise anything, but I can promise to listen." He turned to Elena one final time. "I hope you find what you are looking for." Elena smiled. "I already have." She turned and walked away from the tent, Cole and the Iron Ravens falling into step beside her. Behind them, the wedding reception slowly resumed, the music starting up again and the murmur of conversation filling the air. They climbed back up the hill where the motorcycles waited. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Elena stood at the crest of the hill and looked out over the valley that had once been her entire world. Cole stood beside her. What now? Elena took a deep breath. Now I go home, to my grandmother, to figure out what comes next. Cole nodded. The Iron Ravens will always be here if you need us. Remember that. Elena looked at the line of bikers, these strangers who had become her protectors for a single afternoon. She did not have words for what she felt, Gratitude seemed too small. Wonder seemed too vague. "Thank you," she said simply. "All of you. Thank you." Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. Family takes care of family. That is the only rule that matters. Chapter 3. 3 weeks passed. Elena stayed in Willow Creek, helping her grandmother with the house and the overgrown garden. She pulled weeds and planted bulbs for the spring. She repaired the peeling shutters and painted them a fresh, bright blue. She cooked meals and washed dishes and sat with Rosa in the evenings, listening to stories about her mother that she had never heard before. Slowly, something began to heal inside her. The town talked, of course. Word had spread about the incident at the Whitmore wedding. Some people called Elena brave. Others called her foolish. A few called her things that were much worse. But Elena had stopped caring what the town thought of her. She had spent too many years seeking approval from people who would never give it. On a Tuesday morning, she walked to the elementary school on the edge of town. The community garden that Margaret Chen had fought to protect was visible from the road, a patch of green amid the brown autumn grass. Children were playing on the old swing set, their laughter carrying through the crisp air. Elena found Margaret in the garden, kneeling in the dirt with a trowel in her hand. "Mrs. Chen," Elena said. Margaret looked up and smiled. "Elena, I was hoping you would come by." Elena knelt beside her. "How are things going with the land dispute?" Margaret's smile widened. "Better than I ever imagined. Marcus Whitmore came to the school last week. He spent 2 hours with the principal, the teachers, and the parent committee. He listened to everyone. And then he made an announcement." "What did he say?" Margaret set down her trowel. "He said that his family would donate the land to the school district permanently. No condominiums, no development. The garden and the playground will remain for the children forever." Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest. "That is wonderful news." "It is," Margaret agreed. "But that is not all. He also established a scholarship fund for students from low-income families, and he credited you with changing his perspective." "Me?" Margaret nodded. "He said that seeing you stand up for a stranger reminded him of what courage looks like. He said he had forgotten." Elena sat back on her heels, stunned. She had not expected her actions to have any lasting impact. She had simply done what felt right in the moment. "You started something," Margaret said. "Something bigger than you realize. People in this town are talking about what happened at that wedding. Not just the gossip, the real story. About a woman who stood up for herself and for others, even when no one expected her to." Elena did not know what to say. Margaret reached out and squeezed her hand. "You gave this community a reminder that we needed. That ordinary people can make a difference. That standing up for what is right is never foolish, even when it is hard." Elena stayed at the garden until the afternoon sun began to fade. She helped Margaret plant winter vegetables and repair a section of fence that had fallen over. She talked with parents who came to pick up their children and listened to their stories about the school and the neighborhood. By the time she walked home, the streetlights were coming on and the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Rosa was waiting for her on the front porch, wrapped in a heavy shawl against the evening chill. "You look happy," Rosa said. Elena sat down beside her grandmother. "I feel happy. For the first time in years, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be." Rosa smiled and patted Elena's knee. "That is because you stopped running. When you stop running, you can finally see where you are." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars multiply overhead. "Abuela," Elena said eventually, "why did you never tell me about Cole and the Iron Ravens, about saving his mother?" Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Because it was not about me. I did what any nurse would do. I stayed with a patient who needed me. That is not heroism. That is duty." But Cole remembered. For 40 years he remembered. Rosa nodded slowly. "Some kindnesses plant seeds that grow for generations. We never know which ones they will be. That is why we must be kind always, not just when we expect a reward." Elena thought about those words as the night deepened around them. She thought about the seeds she had planted, knowingly and unknowingly, throughout her life. The relationships she had nurtured and the ones she had neglected, the moments of courage and the moments of cowardice. She had spent so many years focused on her failures that she had forgotten about her successes. The small kindnesses that might have mattered more than she knew, the words of encouragement that might have changed someone's path. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a moment to leave a comment saying, "She reminded me that courage is just fear that decided to keep walking," because that is what Elena taught this town. And that is what I hope you will carry with you too. Chapter 4. Winter came to Willow Creek like an old friend, blanketing the valley in pristine white snow and transforming the mountains into crystalline monuments. Elena watched the seasons change from her grandmother's window, feeling the rhythm of the small town seep into her bones. She had found work at the local library, shelving books and helping patrons navigate the catalog system. It was quiet work, but she loved it. She loved the smell of old paper and the hushed conversations between the stacks. She loved recommending novels to teenagers and picture books to children. The library became her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in other people's stories while slowly making sense of her own. One afternoon in early December, the library door opened and a familiar figure walked in. Cole Reyes, dressed in a heavy jacket instead of his leather vest, snow dusting his gray hair. Elena looked up from the circulation desk. "Cole, what are you doing here?" Cole approached the desk with a smile. "I heard there was a new librarian in town. Thought I would check out the collection." Elena laughed. "We have not updated our motorcycle maintenance section in a while. That is all right. I am more interested in poetry these days." He was not joking. Cole browsed the shelves for half an hour, eventually selecting a collection of Pablo Neruda's verses. Elena checked out the book for him, still marveling at the contradictions of this man. "How are you doing, Elena?" Cole asked as she scanned the barcode. "I am doing well. Better than well, actually. I feel like I am finally building something." Cole nodded. "That is good to hear. The Ravens have been asking about you. Some of the younger members were inspired by what you did at the wedding. They want to start a community outreach program, helping people who are facing difficult situations." Elena blinked. "They want to do that because of me? Because of what you represented? Courage without violence, standing up without tearing down. It is a different kind of strength than most of us are used to, but it is the kind this world needs more of." Elena processed his words in silence. She had never thought of herself as an example to anyone. She had spent most of her life feeling like a cautionary tale. "There is something else," Cole said. His expression grew more serious. "I wanted to warn you. Richard Whitmore has been asking questions about you, about your past in the city." Elena's stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggests he is looking for ammunition. I do not know what he is planning, but I wanted you to be prepared." Elena nodded slowly. She had known that her confrontation with Richard would have consequences. The man was not the type to forgive a public humiliation. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I appreciate the warning." Cole leaned closer. "Whatever happened in the city, Elena, it does not define you. The people here have seen who you really are. Do not let him make you forget that." He took his book and left, the door chiming softly behind him. Elena spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog of anxiety. She had worked hard to leave her city life behind, but some ghosts were not so easily buried. When her shift ended, she walked home through the snow-covered streets, her mind racing. She had made mistakes in the city, serious ones. She had trusted people she should not have trusted. She had gotten involved in situations that had spiraled beyond her control, but she had never done anything truly wrong. She had been foolish, yes, naive, certainly, but not malicious, never malicious. Rosa was waiting with hot chocolate when Elena arrived home, as if she had sensed that her granddaughter needed comfort. "You look troubled," Rosa said. Elena sat down at the kitchen table and wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Richard Whitmore is investigating my past." Rosa's expression remained calm. "And what will he find?" Elena hesitated. Mistakes. Bad judgment. A relationship with a man who turned out to be involved in illegal activities. I did not know what he was doing until it was too late. I was never charged with anything because I was not involved. But the association alone was damaging. Rosa nodded slowly. And you have been carrying this shame ever since. It is why I left, why I stopped calling. I was afraid that if anyone knew, they would see me differently. Rosa reached across the table and took Elena's hands. Mija, listen to me. Shame is a heavy burden, but it only has power when we carry it in secret. The truth, spoken aloud, loses its ability to hurt us. But what if people judge me? Then they will judge you, and you will survive. You have already survived so much. A little judgment from small-minded people will not break you. Elena looked at her grandmother's weathered face, at the eyes that had seen decades of joy and sorrow and everything in between. How did you become so wise? Elena asked. Rosa smiled. By making many mistakes and living long enough to learn from them. That is the only path to wisdom there is. Chapter 5. Richard Whitmore made his move on Christmas Eve. Elena was helping Rosa prepare dinner when the phone rang. Rosa answered, listened for a moment, then handed the phone to Elena with a puzzled expression. It was Sarah Donovan, the editor of the Willow Creek Gazette. Elena, I need to talk to you, Sarah said. Her voice was strained. Richard Whitmore came to my office this morning. He gave me documents about your past, about your time in the city. He wants me to publish them. Elena closed her eyes. What kind of documents? Police reports, witness statements, photographs of you with a man named Daniel Russo. Elena's heart pounded. Daniel Russo had been her boyfriend for 18 months. He had been charming and attentive and seemingly successful. By the time she discovered that his business was a front for money laundering, she was already living in his apartment, already intertwined in his life. She had cooperated with the investigation. She had answered every question the authorities asked. She had been cleared of any wrongdoing. But the experience had shattered her confidence and sent her running back to the only home she had ever known. Are you going to publish it? Elena asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I have not decided yet. That is why I am calling you. I want to hear your side of the story. Elena took a deep breath. My side is simple. I made a mistake. I trusted someone I should not have trusted. When I learned the truth, I did everything I could to make it right. I was never charged with anything because I never did anything wrong. Richard Whitmore says you were complicit in the scheme. Richard Whitmore is angry because I embarrassed him at his son's wedding. This is not about justice. This is about revenge. Sarah sighed. I know. That is what I suspected. But he has powerful friends, Elena. He is putting a lot of pressure on me to run this story. Elena gripped the phone tighter. What are you going to do? I do not know yet. I need to think about it, but I wanted you to know what was happening. I believe in giving people a chance to respond before I make decisions that affect their lives. Thank you, Elena said. I appreciate that more than you know. She hung up and stood in the kitchen, her mind spinning. Rosa watched her with concern. What did she say? Elena told her everything. Rosa listened without interruption, her expression growing darker as the story unfolded. When Elena finished, Rosa stood up and walked to the window. Outside, snow was falling gently, coating the world in white. This man, Rosa said quietly. This Richard Whitmore. He thinks he can destroy you by revealing your past. But he does not understand something important. What is that? Rosa turned to face her granddaughter. He does not understand that you are not the same person you were in the city. You have grown. You have changed. You have become someone stronger, someone wiser. The past he wants to expose no longer exists. It is a ghost, and ghosts cannot hurt people who have stopped running from them. Elena felt tears welling in her eyes. But what if the town turns against me? What if I lose everything I have built here? Rosa crossed the room and took Elena's face in her hands. Then you will build again. That is what strong women do. We build and we lose. and we build again. And each time, we build something better than before. They held each other in the kitchen as the snow continued to fall outside. The dinner preparations lay forgotten on the counter. The world felt very still, very quiet, as if holding its breath. The phone rang again. Elena answered. It was Cole. "We heard what Whitmore is planning," Cole said. "The Ravens want to know what you need." Elena thought for a moment. "I need people to hear my story, the real story, not the version Richard Whitmore wants to tell." "Then you should tell it yourself, before he gets the chance." "How?" Cole paused. "There is a town meeting tomorrow morning, the Christmas Day community gathering at the town hall. Everyone will be there. You could speak." Elena's stomach lurched. "Speak in front of the entire town? You stood up to Richard Whitmore at his son's wedding with nothing but courage and a black dress. You can do this too." Elena looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Elena said. "I will do it." She spent the night preparing. Not a speech, exactly. She did not want to sound rehearsed. But she wrote down the key points she wanted to make. The truth about her past, the lessons she had learned, the person she had become. By morning, she felt ready, or as ready as she would ever be. The town hall was packed when she arrived. Every seat was taken, and people lined the walls, bundled in winter coats and scarves. The Christmas tree in the corner sparkled with lights, and the smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air. Richard Whitmore was seated in the front row, his expression smug. He clearly expected this meeting to be his moment of triumph. Elena walked to the front of the room. The mayor, a kind woman named Patricia Wells, looked surprised but gestured for her to proceed. Elena faced the crowd. She saw faces she recognized and faces she did not. She saw skepticism and curiosity, and in some cases, open hostility. She began to speak. "My name is Elena Vasquez. Most of you know me or knew me when I was younger. I left Willow Creek 7 years ago, and I have only recently returned. Some of you have heard rumors about why I left. Some of you have heard rumors about what I did while I was gone. I am here today to tell you the truth." She told them everything, about her relationship with Daniel Russo, about her ignorance of his crimes, about her cooperation with the investigation and her subsequent exoneration, about the shame that had driven her away from everyone she loved. She spoke for 15 minutes without interruption. When she finished, the room was silent. Richard Whitmore stood up. "This is all very touching," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But how do we know any of it is true? You could be lying to protect yourself." Elena met his gaze. "You are right. I could be lying. But I am not. And you know I am not. Because if I were guilty of anything, I would have been charged. I was not. I was cleared. Completely." Richard's face reddened. "That does not mean you are innocent. It means you were clever enough to avoid prosecution." "No," said a new voice. "It means she was innocent." Everyone turned. Sarah Donovan stood at the back of the room, holding a folder of papers. "I spent all night investigating," Sarah said. "I contacted the FBI office that handled the Russo case. I spoke with the lead investigator. He confirmed everything Elena said. She was a victim, not a participant. The only reason her name appears in any documents is because she was brave enough to come forward and help the authorities." She walked forward and placed the folder on the table in front of Richard. "These are the official records, the ones you conveniently left out when you came to my office, the ones that prove Elena Vasquez did nothing wrong." Richard stared at the folder, his face draining of color. Sarah turned to face the crowd. "I will not be publishing any story attacking Elena. But I will be publishing a story about a powerful man who tried to destroy an innocent woman's reputation out of petty revenge. Unless, of course, Mr. Whitmore would like to issue a public apology." The room erupted in murmurs. Richard looked around, seeing the tide of public opinion turning against him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then slowly, he stood up. "I may have been hasty in my judgment," he said stiffly. "I apologize for any distress I may have caused." He walked out of the town hall without another word. Elena stood at the front of the room, surrounded by applause and well wishes. People she barely knew came forward to shake her hand and offer support. Margaret Chen hugged her tightly. Cole nodded from the back of the room, a smile on his weathered face. Rosa appeared at Elena's side, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Mija. You faced your fear and you won." Elena shook her head. "We all did it. I could not have done this alone." "That is true," Rosa said, "but you had the courage to stand up first. That is what leaders do. They stand up first, and then others follow." Chapter 6. Spring arrived in Willow Creek with a burst of color and warmth. The snow melted, revealing fields of wildflowers that carpeted the valley floor. The mountains shed their winter coats and stood green and majestic against the endless blue sky. Elena stood in her grandmother's garden, surveying the work they had done together over the past months. The flower beds were neat and well tended. The vegetables were beginning to sprout. The blue shutters gleamed in the sunlight. It was the most beautiful garden in the neighborhood once again. A year had passed since she had arrived on that Greyhound bus with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of shame. Now she had a home, a job, a community, and something she had not expected to find: purpose. The community outreach program that Cole had mentioned had become a reality. Elena served on its board, helping to coordinate resources for people facing difficult transitions: divorce, job loss, illness. Whatever challenges life threw at the residents of Willow Creek, the program was there to catch them. The Iron Ravens remained involved, providing protection and support when needed. But the program had grown beyond them, drawing in volunteers from all walks of life: teachers and doctors and mechanics and retired grandparents. People who wanted to help, who wanted to be part of something larger than themselves. Marcus Whitmore had become an unexpected ally. His experience at the wedding had genuinely changed him. He had stepped back from his father's more aggressive business practices and focused instead on philanthropic work. The scholarship program he had established was already helping dozens of students pursue their dreams. He and Elena were not friends exactly. Too much history lay between them for that. But they had developed a mutual respect, a recognition that people could change and grow if given the chance. Richard Whitmore had retreated from public life after his humiliation at the town meeting. His influence in Willow Creek had diminished, though not disappeared entirely. He was still a wealthy man with powerful connections. But he had learned that wealth and power could not buy everything. Some things had to be earned. Elena thought about all of this as she worked in the garden, her hands deep in the rich soil. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the twists and turns that she could never have predicted. A car pulled up to the curb. Elena looked up to see a young woman stepping out, clutching a small suitcase. The woman looked lost, uncertain, exactly the way Elena had looked when she arrived a year ago. Elena wiped her hands on her jeans and walked to the gate. "Can I help you?" she asked. The young woman looked at her with eyes that were red from crying. "I am looking for Rosa Vasquez. I was told she helps people who have nowhere else to go." Elena smiled. "You found the right place. Come inside. We will get you something to eat and you can tell us your story." She led the young woman into the house, where Rosa was already putting the kettle on, as if she had known a visitor was coming. Some things never changed. The cycle continued. Pain leading to healing, isolation leading to community, despair leading to hope. Elena had once believed that her story was one of failure, a woman who had loved the wrong man, trusted the wrong people, made the wrong choices. But she understood now that her story was actually one of redemption, a woman who had fallen and risen again, who had faced her fears and found strength she did not know she possessed. She thought about the day she had arrived at the Whitmore wedding, alone and uninvited, wearing a thrift store dress and carrying nothing but her determination. She thought about the sound of 50 motorcycles pulling up to the gate, the look on Richard Whitmore's face, the moment when everything changed. She had not known then what she was starting. She had simply done what felt right. And that small act of courage had rippled outward, touching lives she would never know, changing a community in ways she could never have imagined. That evening, Elena sat on the front porch with Rosa and the young woman, whose name was Jessica. They watched the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. "Thank you," Jessica said quietly, "for taking me in, for believing me when I said I had nowhere else to go." Elena reached over and squeezed her hand. "Someone did the same for me, not so long ago. That is how it works. We receive kindness and then we pass it on." Rosa nodded wisely. "The world is not changed by grand gestures," she said. "It is changed by small acts of love, repeated endlessly, generation after generation." Elena looked at her grandmother, at this woman who had saved lives and asked for nothing in return, who had planted seeds of kindness that had grown into forests of hope. "I understand now," Elena said. "I understand why you never told me about Cole and the Iron Ravens. It was not about you. It was never about you. It was about the ripples." Rosa smiled. "And now you have created your own ripples, Mija. They will travel farther than you can imagine." The stars began to appear overhead, one by one, until the sky was filled with light. Elena thought about the title of her own story. They laughed when she arrived by bus to her ex's wedding. Then 50 Hell's Angels parked outside. It sounded like a tale of revenge, of confrontation, of dramatic triumph. But that was not what it was about at all. It was about a woman who stopped running from her past, about a grandmother who never stopped believing in the power of kindness, about a brotherhood of bikers who understood that true strength meant protecting the vulnerable, about a community that learned to see beyond appearances and embrace the imperfect humans in their midst. It was about redemption, and redemption, Elena now understood, was not a destination. It was a journey, one that continued every day, with every choice, with every small act of courage and compassion. The night deepened around them, but Elena felt no fear. She was home. She was whole. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And tomorrow, she would wake up and do it all again. If you watched this far, it is because this story touched something inside you. It is because you believe, as I do, that courage and kindness can change the world. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far," so I can get to know you and know who really appreciates the stories on this channel. And if you have not already, please subscribe. Hit the like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to start over, that your past does not define your future, that there are people in this world who will stand beside you when you need them most. Because that is what this channel is about, not just stories, but hope. Real, honest, hard-earned hope. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. Until next time, remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is fear that decided to keep walking, and sometimes when you least expect it, 50 angels on motorcycles will show up to walk beside you.